Top 7 tips for beginner runners. Number 1, take at least one rest day a week when you are first starting to run. When I first started running, I was under the impression that the more I ran, the faster I would get. And this is really true up until you overtrain because you didn't give your body enough time to recover. So I strongly advise new runners when they start running to at least incorporate one rest day a week. Keep in mind that everybody's body is different and that different types of training work for different types of people. So because I'm a middle distance runner, I tend to do better with lower mileage and higher speed workouts, whereas other people who are more aerobically based, they tend to do better with high mileage. Ultimately, when it comes down to it, just listen to your body because sometimes overuse injuries can happen even if you're careful and you do all the right things. And this leads me to my next point. Number 2, slowly ease back into training after sustaining an overuse injury. This may be common sense for most of y'all, but it really wasn't for me, especially when I was new and getting into running my junior year of high school. I came from a competitive soccer background, so I expected every single one of my cross-country practices to be like my soccer practice. That is high energy, high intensity, and maximum effort every single repetition. I finally started getting overuse injuries about 8 months down the road of my training. I really just laughed it off and just thought, you know what, this is really just me being a wimp, so this isn't a problem. And so I would keep training, and every time I took time off from an injury, I would jump right back into my training schedule as though I had never gotten the injury at all. And this resulted in me being injured for like a year. So don't do this, please. During the middle of my senior year, I got COVID, and so I took 2 weeks off to rest and recover. But when I finally felt just an inkling better, I was still sort of sick. I decided to go for a 5-mile run. And then the next day I did a 6-mile run, and I continued running every single day for the next 7 days until I finally decided to do an 11-mile run, and I had never done an 11-mile run in my life. I got Achilles tendonitis, and this lasted for 6 months. It's been a disaster. Another reason I have gotten injured so much is because of tip number 3. Don't go all out on every single training session. Now I know there are a lot of people out there who are going to say, recover as hard as you train and that sort of thing. And they're right to an extent. What I mean by saying not going 100% is literally not treating every single training session like it's a race. So for instance, if coach gives you an easy run, because you are going to have those days, do not go out at 5:30 mile pace the whole way because you are going to exhaust yourself during the week and you're going to have less energy on the days at which you are going to have to go harder. Primary literature says that about 80% of your mileage should be easy pace. If you're unsure about how fast or how slow you should keep your easy runs, my coach had a friend who ran sub 4 minutes in the mile, and his easy runs were between 8-minute pace and 9-minute pace. If he can do it, you can do it too. Ultimately, the main idea is just to keep your easy days easy and your hard days hard.
Number 4, switch your running shoes out every 300 to 500 miles. This can vary for most people, but this is typically the recommended amount given by personal trainers and coaches and PTs out there. When I went into high school, I really was not aware of this at all, so I logged about 800 to 1,000 miles on my Adidas sneakers before I got an overuse injury. So when I finally got fitted for another pair of shoes, which you should do, especially if you're new, because then you can find out which brands work the best for you, then you'll be able to be more confident in which shoes you pick and whatever. But even still, after I got my new shoes, I made another mistake, and this leads me into tip number 5. Don't walk in your running shoes. The reason for this is because you're supposed to change your shoes out every 300 to 500 miles. So if you're walking around in your shoes, you're going to be wearing out the cushioning and support, which will help prevent you from getting overuse injuries. So I used to do this all the time in high school. I'd get a sweet new pair of Asics or something with like neon, and I'd wear it to school thinking I looked badass or something. But then it was really just adding more miles on to my shoes. What happens when you run consistently on old, dead shoes? Well, basically you get injured because the cushioning wears out, and then your feet are subject to higher impact forces which come when your feet strike the ground when you're running. So basically all this means is you should probably get new shoes a little bit earlier than you think. Every single one of my overuse injuries, and my God, I've had a lot, have always happened at the end of one of my shoes' lifetime. I've always, without fail, every single one of my tendonitis injuries happened at around mile 600, maybe 700 on one of my shoes, and I won't ever be doing this again, but it always happened at the end of my shoes lifetime for mileage. Main takeaways from tips 4 and 5 is that you should probably get new shoes a little bit earlier than you think. Now I know shoes are expensive, but getting the shoes earlier is much better than waiting to squeeze out more value from your shoes as opposed to getting injured because you didn't get your shoes early enough. Number 6, strength training is very important even for distance runners. Again, this may seem obvious for a lot of people who've been doing this for a while, but when I first started, I avoided lifting because I thought it would make me much bigger, it would put on more muscle mass, make me heavier, and then it would make me slower. Trust me, this is not the case. This won't happen. And I know a lot of bodybuilders out there and people who are into the gym who have been struggling to gain weight and muscle even doing minimal amounts of cardio. Lifting will not hinder your running performance. It will enhance it because you will be less prone to injury and it will improve your top end speed. And for the final tip, number 7, recover as hard as you train. I never took this seriously until I'd gotten enough overuse injuries under my belt to realize, you know what, there is probably something I should be doing different here. Recovering effectively means getting enough sleep, getting the proper fuel and food to nourish your body, making sure you're doing your stretching after your workouts, and I mean directly after, and making sure you have time to relax and enjoy yourself. The last one is really important and underestimated because you can be doing the above 3 things. You can be getting your sleep, you can be getting your hydration, you can be getting your stretching, and all of that can be perfect. But if your mind is not in the right headspace, then you could have your cortisol and stress levels completely elevated, and this could hinder your performance and your recovery, which will be worse off in the long run. There's definitely a lot of more ways to help with recovery, but we don't have time to get into that today. I plan on making a video about that in the future, but that's my last tip. Anyway guys, those are my top 7 tips for beginner runners. It's neat to think about how fast I could have been if I had just taken the 7 above lessons seriously when I started running. My hope is that you guys can use all the tips and mistakes and injuries I've had over the past couple of months to help you guys make sure that you don't make the same silly, stupid mistakes that I did when I first started. That's the end of the video. If you enjoyed it or learned something new, be sure to give me a like and a sub, and give me a follow on Insta if you want to see more relatable running content. That's everything, and I'll see you in the next one.